Hey, it's Manu with 22 Sound, the independent record store in Mandeville, Louisiana. It is time for our weekly vinyl release highlights. Yeah, just like every week, we buried ourselves in the vast ocean of the vinyl release calendar to come up with what we think are the most noteworthy releases of this week. And this week we're looking at September 16th, 2022. Let's start with a big reunion album. It's the Mars Volta. Yeah, they are back. And of course they're a cult band with a really big following. I don't think I really need to introduce them. But hey, first album in 10 years. There's been times where nobody expected them to ever get back together for new music, but it did happen, and it is about to be released. And it may be actually a bit of a departure of what they've done in the past. They've always been known for kind of expansive, proggy, long compositions. Not only, but I was a big part of them. And on this album, apparently only 2 tracks are over 4 minutes long, so this might be a bit of a more focused, more straightforward Mars Volta album. We'll see. Next up is Clutch. Yeah, this is already their 13th studio album. I'm checking my notes here. Yep, it is. It's called Sunrise on Slaughter Beach. I really love Clutch. Clutch actually introduced to me by my wife Kim shortly after we met, and so it always reminds me of that time we listened to Blast Tyrant about 1,000,000 times during that time, especially The Mob Goes Wild. What a great fucking song. A great album overall. But of course, that's not all Clutch is about. They've been really consistent throughout their career. Great band. And on this one, apparently there is some change in the air, or some new sounds. Apparently there's going to be some vibraphone and theremin on there. So yeah, they're digging out some interesting instruments here to add a little bit to their sound. An experimental Clutch album. We'll see. I hope they don't go stray too far from their core sound, because their core sound is really cool. So we'll see what to expect. Clutch. All right, next up is a much younger artist. It's Jack Harlow with his second album, Come Home, The Kids Miss You. Was released a few months ago. Now it's getting a proper vinyl release, and of course it is hip-hop, so we're kind of used to a little bit of a delay. Not too bad in this case. It's his second studio album, and yeah, he is really one of the biggest rappers in the world right now, commercially speaking. And of course, if you get this big, there's always a little bit of a backlash. Very controversial. Some people love him, some people don't think he's that great, but yeah, definitely interesting career. I mean, he started rapping as a teenager, putting out some mixtapes, selling them at his high school. But then in 2020 he got a really big hit with What's Poppin', aided a lot by TikTok. Then in 2021 had his first Billboard Hot 100 #1 with Lil Nas X. So definitely a guy on the rise, on its way to worldwide stardom. Second album, Jack Harlow. Then we have much older band from the 90s, the London Suede, or as they're known in London and everywhere but the US, the Suede. Anyway, Britpop heroes. Britpop, I noticed when I moved here to America, never been as big over here as it was, of course, especially in Britain, but also in the rest of Europe. Of course, people know Oasis, Blur, and so on, but they never had the cultural impact quite as they had it in their home country. The London Suede, really for me, one of the best bands of that time. They were always a little bit more David Bowie than the Beatles, I guess. They always had a bit of a glam rock influence, and I thought it was very cool. They wrote really cool songs. This album, apparently, they called it, quote, our punk record. It's supposedly very stripped down approach, not so much that kind of bombast that they all often have. No bigger concept or anything in the background. And I think they mean that more in an aesthetic or attitude way, not so much in actual musical style. This doesn't sound like punk as we know it, judging by what we've heard so far, but I guess more from the approach perspective, that back to the basics approach. The London Suede, Autofiction is the name of the album. Then we have the Black Angels with their new album Wilderness of Mirrors. This is a psychedelic rock band from Austin, Texas. They've been around since 2004. Sixth proper studio album. Yeah, psychedelic rock. They, of course, kind of evokes memories of like 60s, 70s, that kind of era. So definitely a little bit of a throwback sound. But I think what's pretty cool about them is that it's not just a throwback, not just looking at old times. There's a little bit of a modernized version, I guess, of that sound, while still paying tribute to the old heroes. They're heavily influenced by the Velvet Underground. The band name is a nod to Velvet Underground, even the band logo is, so that's definitely a big influence for them. But really cool band, really promising. What we heard so far should be a cool album coming out, The Black Angels. And then last but not least, a really big one in the metal world. It's a new Behemoth album, so I'm gonna try to pronounce this. Opvs, Contra, Natvram. Yeah, I'm sure that was really bad. Guessing that's Polish, but anyway, I found out what it means. It means going against the current. That's definitely what they're doing. They are a band that really just always did whatever the hell they pleased, and they got pretty much as big as you can get, I guess, as a band playing this extreme of music style. Somewhere between black and death metal, but they've really gotten huge, especially throughout the last decade. And yeah, there's always a lot of attention to detail in their compositions. This time apparently they didn't even have a deadline, so that attention to detail probably even amplified. So there's definitely I guess a big opus that we can expect here. I would say one of the bigger metal releases of the year, as far as anticipation goes, as far as the status of the band goes, of course. And I'm sure at this point in their career there will be a lot of controversy. If you're that big, you won't be able to get it right for everybody, but definitely one I'm really curious about, the new Behemoth. And then just throwing in one little extra thing, it's a new Robbie Williams album that's getting a proper vinyl release. Robbie Williams, also kind of like the Britpop guys, never been really big over here, but in Europe he was an absolute megastar. I would say circa 2005, pretty much every woman in Europe wanted to fuck him, but he's still around. He's a funny guy, but really the reason why I'm even mentioning this album, which is actually orchestra versions of his biggest hits. Never been the biggest fan of his music, but he did have some really cool songs, especially Angels is really a great pop song. Anyway, it gives me, mentioning this just gives me a little excuse to mention probably the quote of the week. You might have heard Damon Albarn kind of digging at Taylor Swift, that was a little while ago, for not writing her own songs, and then he really had to backpedal because she does indeed write her own songs. Well, when Robbie Williams was asked about that, he suggested for Damon to remove a few ribs and give himself a nosh. I gotta say, the Brits are really good at beefing. Anyway, I think that's a great way to end this video. As always, I'd like to point out, of course, there's many more releases out there, and you can pre-order all those releases on our website, 22soundrecords.com. Check out what else is coming out. Get your pre-orders in right there. The best way to support us is to come to our shop or order from us online. That would be really great. We really appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, all those things. Thank you very much. See y'all next week.